The Elder Scrolls is famous for its epic battles, unforgettable companions, and bustling cities. But some of its most memorable moments are the ones where you're completely alone. No armies to back you up, no followers to watch your back. Just you, an unfamiliar place, and the unsettling feeling that nobody is coming to help. These quests often strip away the comfort of the world around you, placing you deep inside forgotten ruins, isolated realms, abandoned settlements, or impossible situations where the silence is just as intimidating as the enemies waiting ahead. They're the moments that make Tamriel feel enormous, reminding you just how small one person can be in a world thousands of years old. These are the loneliest quests in all of the Elder Scrolls. Few quests in the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion capture the feeling of complete isolation quite like the Lonely Wanderer. At first glance, it appears to be another routine Dark Brotherhood contract. You've been given a target, a location, a reward waiting back at the Sanctuary. But almost immediately, the quest separates itself from every ordinary assassination. There are no crowded city streets, no busy taverns, and no opportunities to disappear into a bustling marketplace after the deed is done. Instead, you're sent into the wilderness to hunt a man who has deliberately abandoned civilization. The deeper you travel, the quieter the world becomes. The roads disappear, the sounds of towns fade into the distance, and before long it's just you, your target, and the endless forests of Cyrodiil. It's one of those rare Elder Scrolls quests where the loneliness isn't simply part of the setting, it becomes the entire experience. The contract itself is deceptively simple. The Black Hand wants someone dead. Your target is Phalion, once a respected Ultima living in the Imperial City. His life has completely fallen apart. Addicted to skooma and consumed by his own personal demons, he has withdrawn from society almost entirely. Rather than spending his days among the people of Cyrodiil, he escapes into the wilderness whenever he can. His destination is a forgotten ruin hidden far away from civilization, Lockmir's house, an abandoned building deep within the Great Forest. It is here that the contract truly begins to distinguish itself. Most Dark Brotherhood missions revolve around opportunity. Targets attend parties, walk through cities, speak with friends, sleep in their own homes. There are witnesses, guards, crowds. The player constantly weighs stealth against speed. The Lonely Wanderer removes all of that. There is almost nobody around, no distractions, no innocent bystanders, no bustling environment to hide within. Instead, the quest strips assassination down to its most basic form: hunter and hunted. The journey itself plays a huge role in creating the atmosphere. Leaving the Imperial City behind, players travel through increasingly isolated countryside. The roads become quieter, wildlife replaces travelers, the familiar sounds of civilization slowly disappear. Oblivion has always excelled at making its wilderness feel peaceful, but here that place gradually becomes uncomfortable. You begin realizing just how alone you are. There are no guards to help, no nearby inns, no villages over the next hill. Only forests stretching in every direction. By the time Lockmir's house finally appears through the trees, it almost feels disconnected from the rest of Tamriel. It isn't simply remote, it feels forgotten. Lockmir's house perfectly complements the story being told. Unlike the grand Aelid ruins or imposing castles scattered across Cyrodiil, this location is painfully ordinary. A small abandoned home slowly being reclaimed by nature. The roof has begun collapsing. The surrounding forest presses tightly against its walls. Nothing about the building suggests comfort. Instead, it feels like somewhere the world itself has quietly decided to erase. That makes it the perfect refuge for someone like Phalion. His own life has become just as abandoned as the place he now hides within. Phalion himself is one of the more tragic targets encountered throughout the Dark Brotherhood questline. Many assassination victims are wealthy nobles, cruel individuals, political rivals, people surrounded by influence and importance. Phalion possesses none of that. He is broken. His addiction has destroyed his future. The once respectable Altmar has become little more than a shadow of the person he used to be. Rather than fighting to reclaim his life, he chooses isolation. The wilderness becomes an escape from reality. The abandoned house becomes somewhere he no longer has to confront what he has lost. That makes the contract feel surprisingly melancholic. The Brotherhood is not removing a powerful enemy, it is extinguishing someone who has already lost almost everything. There is a strange silence surrounding the encounter. Unlike contracts involving dramatic speeches or elaborate betrayals, Phalion offers very little resistance beyond defending himself if attacked. There are no emotional confrontations, no desperate negotiations, no grand revelations, just a lonely man hiding from the world. That restraint actually strengthens the quest. Sometimes silence says more than dialogue ever could. It forces players to think about the circumstances that brought him here. Nobody simply wakes up one morning and decides to disappear into the forest. Years of poor decisions, addiction, isolation, regret. All of those invisible stories linger around the location without ever being spoken aloud. Environmental storytelling does much of the heavy lifting. The abandoned house reflects Phalion's mental state remarkably well. Decay exists everywhere. Nature steadily reclaims what humanity left behind. The building no longer serves the purpose it was originally built for. Instead, it survives as little more than temporary shelter for someone who no longer fits into ordinary society. It's difficult not to notice the parallels. Phalion himself has become similarly disconnected, a man surviving rather than living, existing rather than belonging. The wilderness surrounding him reinforces that feeling constantly. The great forest is beautiful, towering trees, gentle streams, birdsong drifting through the leaves. Yet beauty alone does not remove loneliness. If anything, it intensifies it. Standing in such an enormous landscape, players become acutely aware of their own isolation. There are moments where nothing moves except the trees. No voices, no footsteps, only the wind. That quietness becomes strangely oppressive. The Elder Scrolls often portrays nature as a place of adventure and discovery. Here it becomes somewhere people disappear. The quest also reflects one of the recurring themes throughout the Dark Brotherhood storyline. Death is often deeply personal. Every contract represents a different human story. Some targets deserve sympathy, others inspire none. Phalion falls firmly into the former category. Whether players feel pity or simply view him as another assignment depends entirely upon their own perspective. The game never tells them how to feel, it simply presents the situation. That ambiguity makes a contract linger in the memory far longer than many larger quests. Mechanically, The Lonely Wanderer is relatively straightforward. Narratively, however, it excels because of its atmosphere. The objective itself could hardly be simpler. Find one man, kill him, return home. Yet the journey surrounding that objective transforms it into something much more reflective. The quest gives players time to think, time to absorb, time to appreciate just how isolated both they and their target have become. Compared to other Dark Brotherhood missions, the contrast is striking. Assassinating Imperial officials requires navigating crowded cities. Eliminating noble families involves carefully planned deception. The famous whodunit. Some quests trap players inside a mansion filled with suspicious guests. Those missions thrive on social interaction. The Lonely Wanderer removes society almost entirely. There is no audience, no performance, no applause for a successful kill. Only an empty forest quietly witnessing another death. In many ways, that makes the contract feel far more intimate than some of the Brotherhood's larger spectacles. It also highlights an interesting contradiction about the player. Throughout Oblivion, the hero of Kvatch becomes one of the most celebrated individuals in Cyrodiil. They save cities, close Oblivion gates, protect Martin Septim, earn the admiration of countless people. Yet within the Dark Brotherhood, they repeatedly abandon that heroic identity. Here, nobody knows who they are. Nobody will remember this moment. The kill happens far away from history, far away from recognition. It is simply one lonely individual enduring the life of another. Ultimately, the Lonely Wanderer earns its place among the loneliest quests in all of the Elder Scrolls because everything about it revolves around isolation. The target has isolated himself from society, choosing an abandoned house deep within the forest of Cyrodiil as the final refuge from a life he can no longer face. The player leaves behind the bustling cities, the crowded roads, and the familiar comfort of civilization, venturing into a landscape where the silence becomes almost unsettling. Even the assassination itself lacks spectacle. There are no witnesses, no dramatic speeches, and no triumphant celebration afterward. Just an empty house, an exhausted man, and another quiet death that the rest of the world will never notice. It serves as a reminder that loneliness in the Elder Scrolls isn't always created by ancient ruins or forgotten tombs. Sometimes it's found in the lives of ordinary people who slowly drift so far from everyone around them. By the time someone finally comes looking for them, they're already living as though they've disappeared from the entire world. Few quests in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind embrace loneliness as completely as silent pilgrimage. Unlike most adventures that ask players to defeat powerful enemies or uncover hidden treasures, this quest asks for something much quieter: patience, reflection, solitude. The pilgrimage is exactly what its name promises: a long journey undertaken almost entirely in silence, across one of the harshest landscapes in Tamriel. There are no companions to share the road, no lively conversations to break the stillness, and very little guidance beyond your destination. Instead, you are expected to walk across the ash-covered wilderness of Vardenfell toward the Shrine of Silence, reflecting on the Tribunal's teachings as you travel. It transforms what could have been a simple walk into one of the most introspective experiences in the game. For long stretches, nothing happens at all, and somehow that absence of activity becomes the entire point. In a series often defined by action and discovery, Silent Pilgrimage reminds players that loneliness can sometimes be every bit as memorable as adventure. The quest forms part of the Tribunal Temple's pilgrimages of the Seven Graces. Each pilgrimage teaches an important virtue: generosity, humility, courtesy, justice, pride, and finally silence. Unlike any other religious quest found through fantasy games, these pilgrimages are not designed as grand spectacles. They are deeply personal acts of devotion. The temple expects followers to experience the lessons themselves rather than simply hearing them explained. Silent Pilgrimage embodies that philosophy perfectly. The objective sounds remarkably straightforward: travel to the Shrine of Silence, offer your prayers, receive the blessing. Yet the simplicity is deceptive. The real challenge is not reaching the destination. It is the journey required to get there. The Shrine of Silence lies in one of Morrowind's most unforgiving environments. Ash storms regularly sweep across the landscape, jagged volcano rock dominates the terrain. Visibility often shrinks to only a few meters. The world becomes muted beneath drifting clouds of grey dust. Unlike the greener provinces of Cyrodiil or Skyrim, Vardenfell rarely feels welcoming. Even empty stretches of wilderness poses an uncomfortable atmosphere. The silence here feels different, not peaceful, ancient, almost oppressive. Every step reinforces the idea that this land has endured thousands of years of hardship. Travelling alone only magnifies those feelings. Unlike later Elder Scrolls games, companions are almost non-existent throughout Morrowind. The player spends the overwhelming majority of the adventure alone. The quest embraces that design rather than fighting against it. There are long stretches where the only sounds are footsteps across volcanic stone, distant winds, and the occasional roar of creatures hidden somewhere beyond the ash. Conversation disappears, settlements become increasingly distant. For a while, it feels as though the rest of the world has simply ceased to exist. That isolation creates an unusual emotional response. Modern games often fear silence. Music constantly plays. Characters frequently comment on events. Objectives update every few moments. Morrowind does almost none of that. Silent Pilgrimage trusts the player to occupy their own thoughts. The result is surprisingly powerful. Instead of focusing entirely upon reaching the shrine, players begin paying attention to the landscape around them. The towering mushroom forests, the twisted volcanic formations, the endless ash drifting through the air. Everything suddenly feels larger, and the player feels very small. The quest's religious significance also contributes to its loneliness as well. Pilgrimages are traditionally personal experiences. While others may walk similar paths, every individual ultimately undertakes the journey alone. No one else can complete it for you. No priest accompanies you. No fellow pilgrim shares your burdens. The temple believes spiritual understanding must come through personal reflection. Whether players themselves share those beliefs is almost irrelevant. The structure of the quest encourages introspection regardless. There is also something fascinating about silence itself within Morrowind's culture. The Tribunal Temple places tremendous value upon discipline, restraint, humility. Speaking less can become an expression of wisdom rather than weakness. The pilgrimage therefore teaches more than simple obedience. It encourages followers to recognize that understanding often comes through observation instead of conversation. That lesson fits Morrowind remarkably well. The province constantly rewards players who pay close attention to the world around them, environmental details, books, architecture, and even small conversations. Every element contributes to understanding Dunmar society. Silence allows those details to emerge. The location of the shrine reinforces these themes beautifully. Rather than standing within a magnificent city or an impressive temple, it occupies an isolated landscape where very few people ever travel. The journey itself becomes an act of commitment. Anyone reaching the shrine has deliberately chosen to leave comfort behind. That physical separation mirrors the emotional separation experienced throughout the entire quest. Distance creates perspective. Isolation creates clarity, at least according to the temple's teachings. Of course, this remains Morrowind. Complete solitude is never entirely safe. The wilderness contains cliff races, blighted creatures, hostile wildlife, occasional bandits, and yet these dangers almost enhance the loneliness rather than interrupt it. There is no city guard coming to help, no nearby traveller offering assistance. Every encounter reinforces self-reliance. Victory depends entirely upon the player's own preparation and judgment. That feeling echoes throughout Morrowind as a whole. The province rarely protects inexperienced adventurers. Instead, it expects them to adapt. Silent Pilgrimage quietly captures that philosophy as well. Compared to many quests involving the Tribunal Temple, the absence of major characters is particularly striking. There are no lengthy conversations with Vivek, no political debates, no complicated moral dilemmas. The quest deliberately removes distractions. The player spends more time interacting with the environment than with other people. That environmental focus allows Vardenfell itself to become the central character. The ash, the wind, the silence, the loneliness. Everything works together to create an atmosphere unlike almost everything else in the series. It is also worth remembering where this pilgrimage takes place within the wider context of Morrowind's story. The province stands on the edge of catastrophe. Dagoth grows stronger, the blight spreads across Vardenfell, Corpus continues claiming new victims. Political tensions divide the great houses. Yet Silent Pilgrimage momentarily steps away from those enormous conflicts. Instead of asking players to save the world, it asks them to simply walk. That contrast makes the experience even more memorable. Sometimes the smallest journeys become the most meaningful. Mechanically, very little happens. Emotionally, quite a lot does. Without constant objectives competing for attention, players naturally begin reflecting upon their own adventure. Everything accomplished so far, everything still waiting ahead. The pilgrimage almost functions as an opportunity to pause before returning to the chaos surrounding Red Mountain. Very few quests intentionally create that kind of emotional breathing room. Even the reward reflects the philosophy behind the quest. The blessing itself is useful, but hardly extravagant. The temple never presents pilgrimage as a transaction. The value lies in completing the journey rather than receiving material compensation afterward. That subtle distinction strengthens the authenticity of the experience. Faith is demonstrated through commitment, not reward. Compared with the more dramatic, lonely quests throughout the Elder Scrolls, Silent Pilgrimage achieves isolation in a completely different way. There are no haunted ruins, no abandoned villages, no terrifying realms of oblivion. Instead, loneliness emerges through distance, reflection, and the quiet understanding that for this brief journey, the only company you truly have is your own. Ultimately, the quest Silent Pilgrimage earns its place among the loneliest ones in all of the Elder Scrolls because it transforms isolation into objective rather than the obstacle. The player leaves behind Morrowind's towns, politics, and familiar faces crossing a harsh volcanic landscape, where the wind becomes louder than any conversation and the endless ash makes the world feel almost empty. Every step towards the Shrine of Silence reinforces the same lesson. Some journeys cannot be shared. There are no companions offering encouragement, no dramatic battles demanding attention, and no triumphant celebrations waiting at the end. Instead, the quest asks players to embrace the quiet, to experience the vastness of Vardenfell without distraction, and to discover meaning in a world that often feels indifferent to their existence. It is a remarkably simple quest on paper, yet one of the most effective demonstrations of how loneliness can be created not through horror or despair, but through silence itself. Long after the blessing has been received and the pilgrimage is complete, what most players remember is not the destination, but the overwhelming feeling of walking alone beneath Morrowind's endless ash-filled sky. Among the many side quests scattered across the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, the Sunken One stands out as one of the loneliest experiences in the entire game. Unlike quests that unfold within bustling cities or alongside memorable companions, this adventure strips away nearly every comforting aspect of Cyrodiil. There are no armies marching beside you, no guild members lending a hand, and no friendly settlements waiting just around the corner. Instead, the quest leads you toward the isolated marshlands surrounding the Nibin Bay, where abandoned ruins and forgotten waterways create an overwhelming sense of solitude. It begins with what seems like a simple mystery involving an ancient Aelie ruin and a legendary undead guardian. But as the journey unfolds, the player gradually realizes that the greatest challenge isn't simply defeating an enemy. It's the unsettling feeling that you've wandered into a place completely abandoned by the rest of the world. Every step deeper into the ruin reinforces the same idea. Whatever happened here occurred long ago, and no one has returned since. The quest begins with a story, rumors, legends passed between travelers, whispers about an ancient figure known only as the Sunken One. Unlike many quests that immediately introduce colourful characters or dramatic confrontations, this one begins almost entirely through curiosity. Who was the Sunken One? Why has the story survived for so long? What still waits beneath the surface? Those unanswered questions quietly pull the player toward one of Cyrodiil's forgotten corners. The journey itself immediately creates distance, leaving behind the Imperial City's crowded streets and the safer roads of the province. Players travel into increasingly isolated countryside. The landscape gradually changes. Dense vegetation replaces farmland. The sounds of civilization fade. The roads become quieter. Eventually, it feels as though the world has simply forgotten this place. Oblivion excels at making its wilderness feel expansive, but here that openness transforms into something far more unsettling. There is beauty in the marshes. Still water reflects the sky. Tall reeds sway gently in the breeze. Wildlife moves through the undergrowth, yet beneath that calm exterior is an unmistakable feeling of abandonment. Few travelers pass through, fewer still have reason to stop. The environment quietly tells you that whatever secrets remain here have stayed hidden for generations. That isolation becomes one of the quest's greatest strengths. Unlike many dungeon crawls where enemies constantly rush towards the player, The Sunken One embraces long periods of quiet exploration. There are moments where the only sounds are your own footsteps, the movement of water, and distant ambient noises echoing across the swamp. Those stretches of silence allow anticipation to build naturally. Every new chamber feels uncertain. Every dark corridor suggests forgotten history. The ruin itself plays an enormous role in shaping the atmosphere. Like many A-led structures throughout Cyrodiil, it represents the remains of a civilization that vanished thousands of years earlier. The polished stone walls still stand. Ancient architecture survives remarkably well, yet the people who built it disappeared long before the Empire ever existed. Throughout Oblivion, players repeatedly encounter the remnants of their civilization. Magnificent cities reduced to silent ruins. Beautiful craftsmanship surviving without its creators. The Sunken One quest quietly reinforces one of the recurring themes surrounding the Aelids. Even the greatest empires eventually become forgotten. Only empty halls remain, and perhaps the most striking feature of the quest is its title, The Sunken One. It immediately creates questions. The name sounds less like that of a person and more like a myth. Something ancient, something buried, something almost swallowed by history itself. By the time players finally confront the truth behind the legend, the title has already accomplished much of its work. It has transformed an ordinary enemy into something larger than life through mystery alone. Unlike quests where villains constantly taunt the player through dialogue, the Sunken One remains almost entirely silent. There are no speeches explaining motivations, no elaborate political conspiracies. The isolation of the quest means that the storytelling relies heavily upon atmosphere rather than conversation. The environment speaks louder than any character. That restraint proves remarkably effective. The player spends much of the experience imagining the events that once unfolded here. Environmental storytelling carries much of the emotional impact. Flooded passages, weathered stone, forgotten relics. Everything suggests centuries of neglect. Nature has slowly reclaimed the site. Water gradually erodes what civilization once built. Time itself becomes the greatest force acting upon the ruin. The player arrives only at the very end of the story that began long before their birth. Compared with many Oblivion quests filled with bustling NPCs, the contrast is striking. The Fighters Guild sends you alongside fellow warriors. The Mages Guild surrounds you with scholars. Even the Dark Brotherhood provides a family of assassins. Here there is almost nobody. No companions commenting on discoveries. No witnesses sharing observations. Only the player moving steadily through ancient darkness. That absence creates genuine loneliness. It also reinforces the feeling of vulnerability. Without companions, every decision becomes personal. Every danger must be faced alone. There is no waiting to revive you, no reassuring conversation after the battle ends. Success belongs entirely to the player. Failure does as well. The atmosphere also benefits enormously from Oblivion's sound design. Echoes travel through empty chambers. Water drips somewhere beyond sight. Music often fades into subtle ambience, allowing the ruin itself to dominate the experience. Silence becomes almost tangible. Instead of overwhelming players with constant noise, the game trusts quiet moments to create tension. It is a subtle technique, one that works surprisingly well. The loneliness of the quest is not merely physical, it is historical. The player walks through places where original inhabitants disappeared thousands of years ago. Whatever friendships, families, celebrations, and tragedies once filled these halls have long since vanished. Only fragments remain. Every ruin throughout the Elder Scrolls reminds players that civilizations are temporary. The Sunken One simply delivers that message with unusual intimacy. Even the final confrontation reflects this theme. Rather than defeating a living antagonist surrounded by loyal followers, the player faces a relic of the past. The battle feels less like ending an ongoing conflict and more like closing the final chapter of an ancient story. History has already moved on. The player simply provides its conclusion. After the quest ends, there is remarkably little celebration. no cheering crowds, no major political consequences, no dramatic recognition across Cyrodiil. The player quietly leaves the ruin much as they entered it, alone. The abandoned halls return to stillness. It is almost as though the world immediately begins forgetting the adventure ever happened. That understated conclusion perfectly matches the tone established from the very beginning. There is also something symbolic about returning to civilization afterward. The roads suddenly feel busier, cities seem louder, ordinary conversations become confronting. The loneliness of the quest subtly changes how players experience the wider world. Only after spending so long in complete isolation do they fully appreciate the presence of other people again. Few quests achieve that emotional contrast so effectively. Mechanically, The Sunken One is not among Oblivion's largest adventures. It does not reshape the Empire or determine the fate of kingdoms. Yet emotionally, it leaves a surprisingly lasting impression, but it understands that loneliness can be every bit as memorable as spectacle. Sometimes the strongest atmosphere comes not from overwhelming danger, but from overwhelming emptiness. Ultimately, The Sunken One earns its place among the loneliest quests in all of the Elder Scrolls, because it embraces isolation at every opportunity. From the quiet journey through Cyrodiil's forgotten marshlands, to the silent corridors of an abandoned alien ruin, every part of the experience reminds the players how completely removed they are from the rest of the world. There are no loyal companions to share the burden, no bustling settlements nearby, and no comforting voices echoing the darkness. Instead, there is only ancient history, abandoned architecture, and the lingering presence of a legend that has survived long after everyone connected to it disappeared. By the time the quest reaches its conclusion, the greatest memory is not simply defeating the Sunken One itself, but the overwhelming feeling of walking through a place where time, silence, and solitude have become far more powerful than any monster waiting at the end. When people talk about Skyrim, they mention dragons, shouts, ancient tombs, and heroism. But beneath the Nordic snow and glory of the Dragonborn's path lies something far darker, something more intimate, personal, quietly terrifying. Skyrim is full of the strange, the unspoken, and the morally rotten. Because for every Radiant fetch quest or bandit camp, there's a story that's more than dangerous. It's disturbing. Not just in what it asks you to do, but in how it lingers after you've done it. This is a descent into 5 of those stories. 5 quests that leave you changed. 5 pieces of Skyrim's hidden heart that remind you in a world filled with monsters, sometimes the worst thing you'll face is yourself. From the outside, it looks like any old Markarth home. Just one more abandoned building clinging to the city's craggy edge. Then vigilant Tyrannus waves you over. He asks you for your help investigating a haunted house. You agree, you expect spiders or bandits, or something else. What you get is Molag Bal. As soon as you enter, things shift. Furniture flies across the room. The vigilant panics. You descend into the basement, and that's when the Daedra speaks. Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination, enslavement, and suffering, traps you, forces you to torture a man chained to a blood-stained altar. And he watches, and he enjoys it. But what makes this quest truly disturbing isn't the violence, it's how quietly it happens. How your choice is reduced to do as you're told or die. And the game never gives you a way out. No third option, no mercy. You just leave the house with a powerful mace. But you also leave with blood on your hands. The blood of the old priest and the blood of the vigilant. And the awareness that in this story, you were never the hero. Windhelm is cold even in daylight, but its real chill creeps in through the alleys. At night, you find a body in the graveyard, a woman murdered. A city guard explains it's not the first time. You're dragged into the role of the amateur detective. The tools of the killer, bone swords, butcher knives, strange magical implements. It becomes clear that this isn't a simple crime, is it? It's necromancy, maybe. Someone is harvesting body parts. You suspect the court mage, the steward, then a meek, awkward man who seems like he couldn't harm a fly. And that's where the quest twists into something more uncomfortable, because you could get it wrong. If you rush the investigation, you can arrest the wrong man, and the real killer may go free, and then the city of Windhelm carries on. But even if you catch the true culprit, what's left is unsettling. A man who lived among the people, walking their streets pretending to be normal, while building a corpse bride in secret. It's not a fight, it's a reminder that evil doesn't always hide in crypts. Sometimes it lives in the spare room down the hall. The people of Dawnstar can't sleep. They're plagued by nightmares so vivid they tremble during the day, and some even stop eating, others stop working, and fear curls in every corner of every conversation. And then you meet Erenda, a former priest of the Daedric Prince of Dreams, Illusions, and Twisted Memories. He believes the source of the nightmares lies inside Nightcaller Temple, once a sanctuary, now a Daedric ruin. You travel there together, but then what follows is a descent into the mind's worst fears. The temple is filled with dreamers, frozen in time by a magical device known as the miasma. You relive Erenda's memories. You uncover betrayals, wars, and Daedric pacts made under the illusion of faith. The climax comes not in combat, but in choice. The Daedric Prince demands you to kill him, claiming he plans to betray you, the man you travelled to this temple with. He begs for trust, and you must decide, kill a man who helped you based on the word of a Daedra, or defy the prince and risk corruption. But there is no perfect ending, just the realization that trust, like dreams, can be twisted until you don't know what's real anymore. You hear rumours that the Hall of the Dead is locked. You ask about it. The priest gives you somewhat of a vague answer, something about a smell. Investigating further, you meet Iola, a woman with calm eyes and a soft voice. She tells you the truth, that the hall is haunted because someone's been eating the dead. Then she says something even worse, that it was her, and that you should try it too. You're invited to a hidden shrine deep within a cave, where a cult of Namira, the Daedric Prince of Decay and Filth, gathers to feast on corpses. Your task? Bring someone to be the meal. Not a stranger, but a friend. The very priest who asked you to investigate. You can refuse, but if you go through with it, you become a part of it. You sit at the table, you eat, and Skyrim rewards you with the Ring of Namira, enhancing your ability to feed on the dead. The game actually doesn't punish you, and no one finds out. But you will. Every time you walk past a meal, every time you see a body, and wonder if it's worth more dead than buried. The Dark Brotherhood questline starts simply. A rumour. A boy named Aventus Arantino, alone in Windhelm, performing the Black Sacrament. You find him. He's trying to summon assassins to kill a cruel head mistress. And you do it. Then, after that very moment, the Dark Brotherhood contacts you. The very next time you lay to rest, you'll wake up in an abandoned shack. But what follows is a slow descent into one of Skyrim's most fascinating and disturbing narratives. You become an agent of death, paid to kill, rewarded for creativity, celebrated for cruelty. Targets range from corrupt nobles to innocent beggars. One mission even asks you to murder a bride on her wedding day, not for justice, but spectacle. You sit in a room and kill strangers while they sleep. You poison mead meant for a king. You slit throats on a stage while applause roars around you. And when you think you understand the Brotherhood, it falls apart. You're betrayed from within. Your sanctuary is destroyed. The people you trusted are butchered. And in the end, you wear the mantle of listener, a servant to an unmummified corpse who whispers in silence. What's disturbing here isn't just the blood. It's how normal it starts to feel, until you no longer ask who the target is, just how much they are worth. Skyrim gives you power, but it rarely tells you how to use it. These quests don't challenge your stats, they challenge your comfort. They take you into crypts and cathedrals, dreamscapes and cult circles, They offer you rewards you shouldn't want and ask questions you can't answer cleanly. Will you torture for a god, kill for a paycheck, eat a man for a ring? Skyrim doesn't judge you. That's what makes it worse. Because in a land torn by dragons and war, it's not always the monsters on the mountain that linger in your mind. It's the choices you made quietly, in the shadows. Some factions in Skyrim burn bright. The Companions boast glory, the College of Winterhold hoards magic and secrets, the Thieves' Guild rules shadows, the Dark Brotherhood bleeds myth and murder. But one group walks the roads, quiet, overlooked, fewer every year. You don't find them in grand halls, you don't hear bards sing their names. They wear no fine armour, they speak of mercy, but carry silver and fire. And if you do hear about them, it's usually after something terrible has already happened. They are the Vigilants of Stendarr, and they are the loneliest faction in all of Skyrim. The Vigilants worship Stendarr, the Aedra of mercy, justice, and righteous endurance. He is the patron of healers and judges, defenders of the weak and the broken. But his mercy has limits. To the Vigilants, Daedra are an infection, vampires are a disease, necromancy is a violation of natural law, lycanthropy is also corruption. And so they hunt, not for glory, not for gold, but for purity. They walk Skyrim's roads in pairs or alone, always in their signature robes. They stop you with stern warnings. You wear the armour of the Daedra, one might say. Take care, they do not claim you. They don't fight for a banner, they fight for balance. But balance rarely fights back fairly. The first time most players see a Vigilant of Stendarr, it's by chance. They're walking the road, and most players pass by them. They aren't quest givers, they don't offer rewards, they don't unlock new powers or give you a horse. They're just there, preaching, patrolling, warning. They carry silver swords and cure disease on sight. They ask you if you need help, they ask you if you've seen signs of Daedric corruption, and then they're gone. Off to fight something alone, off to die somewhere no one will ever find them. You can visit their base. It's not grand, not fortified, not holy. The Hall of the Vigilant sits just south of Dawnstar, small, stone, and easily missed. No banners fly, no guards patrol. It looks like a roadside inn with no guests. Inside are beds, shrines, and a few silver weapons. The library is small, the food is modest. There's no choir, no leadership council, no paladin in shining armour. Just a handful of devoted clerics preparing for war no one else is fighting. And when you arrive later in the game, if you have the Dawnguard DLC installed, you'll find something else. Nothing. Because the hall has burned down. The Vigilants are dead and no one mourns them at all. The Vigilants have one mission: root out supernatural evil. But they are not warriors, are they? They wear robes, not steel. They walk instead of ride. They carry silver swords, but few are trained to use them well. They go up against Daedra, necromancers, vampires, and werewolves. And they lose. Constantly. They have no allies, the College of Winterhold dismisses them, the Companions hate them, even the Dawnguard, who later rise to face the vampire threat, mock their piety. The Vigilants are outnumbered, outmatched, and outfinanced. But they keep going, because this isn't a faction built for power, it's built for belief, and belief in Skyrim is rarely rewarded. The Vigilants seem like they should be terrifying. They burn books, they burn witches, they exterminate monsters without hesitation. Their worldview is binary, light or darkness, nothing in between. But in practice, they are harmless, because no one takes them seriously. They lecture passing adventurers while Oblivion gates smoulder in ancient ruins. They preach about Daedric corruption while their shrine stands untouched. They die to random vampires while the real threat gathers underground. And the world doesn't really listen, even as the threat grows, especially then, because Skyrim is too tired, too divided, too proud, and the Vigilants are easy to ignore. If you install the Dawnguard expansion, the Vigilants don't get a new questline. They don't get a redemption arc, they get erased. When the vampire clan launches their assault, the whole of the Vigilant is destroyed in a single night. All that remains are corpses, ashes, and the occasional haunted whisper. No reinforcers come, no cities respond, no bards sing. The Dawn Guard rise from the ruins tougher, colder, and better armed. But they don't mourn. The Vigilants weren't soldiers, they were martyrs. And in the world of Skyrim, martyrs die quietly. The Keeper is the highest ranking member of the Vigilance scene in game. She appears once, she speaks softly, and she tries to help. And then she dies off screen. Her body lies in the ruins of the hall, burnt alongside her brothers and sisters. You can loot her robes, her silver sword, her body isn't marked, her name isn't whispered in Windhelm or recorded in Solitude. She dies the way most Vigilants do, quietly, with purpose, and completely alone. It would be easy to feel nothing for the Vigilants. They are, after all, extremists. They preach destruction for anything they deem unnatural. They kill before they ask questions. They don't believe in cure or redemption, only in fire and steel. In another story, they'd be the villains. And yet, Skyrim doesn't treat them like tyrants. It treats them like ghosts. Because maybe the real tragedy isn't that their beliefs are dangerous. It's that they never hold the chance to become dangerous. They never become powerful enough to become a threat. They died in a corner of the map, ideologically untested and morally unchallenged, and forgotten. There is no Vigilant faction path, no questline, no dialogue tree that lets you serve Stendarr. You can wear their robes, carry their silver swords, and speak their words, but you cannot become one of them. You can only watch them fade. The companions have a hall, the mages do have a college. Even the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood have full questline, character arcs, and homes to return to. But the Vigilants, they don't recruit you. They just wait to be destroyed. And when they are, the world goes on. Even after the hall is gone, you still see them, here and there, on roads, in caves, and near shrines. Vigilants still patrol, still preach, still try. And you realise something. The Order isn't completely gone. It's just shattered, broken into survivors, wanderers, and believers. A flicker in a storm that's already swallowed their brothers. They walk alone now, not as a faction, but as remnants. And every time you see one, you wonder how long they'll last. Skyrim is full of factions that evolve, crumble, and rebuild. The Vigilants do not. They are the only faction built to fail, and built to keep going anyway. They are the paladins who arrive too late, the priests who fight in silence, the only people in Skyrim trying to stop the darkness before it grows teeth. And the world ignores them, laughs at them, watches them die, and moves on. But somewhere in the fog, a Vigilant of Stendarr still walks, alone. And if that's not the loneliest thing in Skyrim, then nothing is. Skyrim is a land of grand halls and forgotten ruins. Its world is populated with castles in the sky, ancient tombs buried in frost, and cities soaked in blood and power. But every so often you stumble upon something. Something smaller, something quieter. A single door, a crumbling wall, and a barking dog. No quest marker leads you here, no courier passes a note. You just see the smoke rising from a chimney in the trees and thought, why not? And that's how most players find Miko's shack, a decaying little cabin buried in the forests near Morthal. It's not a settlement, it's not even a farm, it's just a shack with a name and a dog who waits. But if you stop, and if you step inside the small home, if you look, you'll find one of the most quietly heartbreaking places in all of Skyrim. Miko's shack is easy to miss. Very easy. It's nestled between trees and fog, near the edge of the marshes south of Morthal. No signpost points to it, no townsfolk talk about it, it doesn't appear on your map until you're standing quite near it. There's no road, just a dirt trail and some wishful thinking. When you arrive, it looks like any other abandoned cabin. The roof is slanted, the walls creak, the door is slightly ajar. But there's a detail that sticks with you before you even step inside. The barking. A dog's howl echoes through the trees, persistent and lonely, not aggressive, just desperate. As if he's been calling to someone for days, or weeks, or longer. And when you enter the shack, there's only one body, a man, dead in his bed, unnamed, undisturbed, and beside him, Miko, waiting. In most of Skyrim, animals are treated like enemies or meat. Wolves attack on sight, bears chase you into cliffs, saber cats maul travelers and leave their carcasses along the road. But Miko is different. He doesn't bark at you, he doesn't flee, he doesn't even growl when you open the shack door. He just looks at you, like he's hoping for something, like he's asking. You can choose to adopt Miko as a follower. He'll wag his tail, bark once in joy, and follow you for the rest of your Skyrim journey. He'll fight for you, wait by your side, return to the shack if he's told. But most players don't, because what Miko represents is more than just a companion slot. He's grief, he's loyalty, he's that one remaining thread tying this forgotten place to the world. A dog who stayed, even after the man who fed him was gone. Unlike other tragic locations in Skyrim, Bleak Falls Barrow, Frostflow Lighthouse, even the Lost Prospect Mine, there is no note in Miko's shack. There's one journal recounting his very last days as a Nord, and that's what makes it worse. Because when you don't get an explanation, your mind fills the gaps. Maybe the man was a hunter who died of sickness. Maybe he was a war veteran with no one left to fight for. Maybe Miko was his only family, and when death came, he died whispering the dog's name. The silence leaves more room for the tragedy, and the game doesn't offer you any closure, just a corpse and a dog, and ultimately how the corpse died. The interior of Miko's shack is bare. A single bed, a table with some rotting food, a shelf with sparse belongings. There's no fireplace, no warmth, no storage. Just the feeling that this wasn't a life, but an afterthought. Everything inside feels frozen in time, like the man died mid-routine and the world simply stopped turning. Miko still walks the perimeter. He eats nothing, he plays with no toys, the food in the bowl is stale, and the books are unread. Even the bed where the body lies remaining untouched. There's no blood, no decay, no sign of struggle. Just quiet. Like the man laid down one night and never woke up. And ultimately, no one came to check, except his humble follower, Miko. Location matters. Miko's shack is placed deliberately deep in the woods, far from towns or cities, tucked between the swampy banks of Yarlmarch and the pines of Falkreath Hold. You can see the edge of the map from here. It feels like a place meant to be missed, which makes the finding of it so jarring, because it's not a dungeon or a boss room. It's a house with a name, a shack with a door you can open, and a dog you can take with you. And for many players, it's the first time the game asks you to confront emotional isolation. Not with a tragic backstory, not with a battle, but with a moment of pause, a choice about what comes next. If you adopt Miko, he never speaks. And I guess that's right because he is a dog. But in Skyrim, it's different. He doesn't have a voice actor, no magical barks, no enchanted memories. But he follows you everywhere. He helps in battle, he whines when you're injured. He returns to the shack if dismissed. And in doing so, he becomes one of the most quietly compelling characters in the game. Because unlike Lydia or Ayla, or even Barbas, the talking Daedric Hound, Miko represents something deeply human. The weight of memory. He doesn't ask for anything, he doesn't accept rewards, he just follows, because he's always followed. And because that's all he's ever known how to do. Online communities have turned Miko's shack into a symbol. Reddit threads, fan arts, YouTube videos, and even mods revolve around this one cabin, this one dog, and the unspoken narrative Skyrim lets players build themselves. Some mods give Miko a full questline, others let you bury the body. Give the shack a proper fire or adopt it as a player home. Some even allow Miko to speak through journals or dialogue. But all of them stem from the same thing, the absence of answers. Players wanted more, they wanted to mourn, to give Miko closure, because the game never did. Unlike so many places in Skyrim, Miko's shack doesn't tie into any quests. You can leave Miko behind, loot the shack, walk away. No NPC will mention it. No world event will unfold. The shack won't be marked cleared. It won't collapse. It won't catch fire, and it won't evolve. All you did was find it, and that's it. And yet, players remember Miko's shack more vividly than most forts, dungeons, or even cities. Because it isn't about mechanics. It's about what it makes you feel. Skyrim is a game full of noise. Dragons roar from mountaintops, magic crackles in dungeons, bandits shout curses as they charge with axes drawn. But Miko's shack, it's quiet. No music plays inside, no one calls your name, there's just a dog, a body, and the wind. It's one of the few places in the game where you stop, not because you were told to, but because something real hit you. You weren't ready for it, and it made you feel something. Loss, pity, wonder. It's a lonely place, and that loneliness tends to stay with you. Players don't need to visit Miko's shack. There's no reward, no challenge, no achievement. And yet many return. Not to loot, not to quest, but to remember. Some bring Miko along on their adventures. Others build nearby houses using Hearthfire just to keep him close. A few simply revisit from time to time, stopping by to check on him like an old friend you've left behind. It's not about usefulness, it's about connection. A little shack, a quiet death, a loyal dog. And that feeling that somehow you were meant to see it, even if no one told you to look. There are many places in Skyrim that shake you. Bleakfall Barrow stuns with its size, Labyrinthian dazzles with its history, Blackreach haunts with its scale, but Miko's shack, it whispers. It doesn't try to impress. It doesn't even try to explain. It just shows you something simple, something sad, something real. A dog, a body, a silence, and a door that never closed. In Skyrim, everyone has a job. Merchants sell things, guards say things, and Jarls sit on chairs and argue about things. Even Fandel in Riverwood has a job. He walks back and forth between a stump and a woodpile, chopping firewood forever, as if his AI brain is powered by splinters. But the point is, they all matter. If you pop open the console, click on an NPC and peek behind the curtain, you'll see it. Faction tags, daily routines, AI packages, dialogue trees. Every NPC is plugged into the machine. They're little gears in a very large, very buggy medieval clock. Every NPC except one. She doesn't talk much, she doesn't sell anything. She has no family, no town, no meaningful connection to any questline. She doesn't even have a real name, just a first name, one word. But she's always there, in every playthrough, in the exact same place, waiting. South of Falkreath, past the Black Lake and through a chokehold of pines, you'll find her. You have to want to get there. There's no main road, no quest marker. Just wander far enough into the mountains and the trees start crowding in. The music cuts out, snow starts to fall. You see wolves instead of bandits. You pass into that kind of quiet only Skyrim can do. The kind that feels like the rest of the game has forgotten to follow you. And then you see the cabin. It's not haunted, not on fire, not swarming with cultists or vampires or necromancers with names like Zaril the Blackened. It's just a cabin. A little wooden bridge over a stream, some practice dummies. It's all very peaceful. And outside the cabin, bow on her back, calm expression on her face, is her, Angie. She says hello. You say hello back. And then she just exists. At first glance, Angie seems straightforward. She offers to teach you how to shoot a bow. It's simple. Hit the target, get some free arrows, earn a few skill points. She even tells you a little bit about herself. Her parents were killed by the Thalmor. She came out here to live alone, and she wants to be left in peace. It's a neat little detour, a side activity like mining ore or finding a weird bug in a jar. But once you finish her archery training, that's it. No follow-up quest, no new dialogue. She doesn't become a new follower. You can't marry her, you can't send her to one of your Hearthfire homes to be your personal archer in residence. She doesn't even acknowledge you after that. You train with her, She says thanks, and then she just goes back to standing, like nothing happened at all. Skyrim is full of self-contained characters. Froki living in a cave with his grandson, the ghost of old Roldan Inn, the skeleton sitting at a dinner table on top of a mountain for no reason at all. But even these oddballs usually tie into something else. A quest, a Daedric artifact, a Radiant event, a weird joke. Angie doesn't. She's not part of any faction. No one mentions her. She never leaves her cabin. She has no enemies, no allies, no story arc. She's a rock in the stream. The water just flows around her. Which begs the question, why is she here at all? If you dig into the creation kit, the dusty attic of Bethesda's imagination, you start to find traces. Angie's cabin is flagged as a player safe house, which is rare. The tag means you can sleep there, store items, live there, and the game won't eventually reset or eat your loot. But Skyrim never tells you this. There's no note on the table, no mention in dialogue, no fast travel icon. Bethesda created a whole safe house and then didn't put up a welcome mat. It's like they built the skeleton of something bigger and then just stopped. Maybe she was supposed to be a follower. Maybe she had a role in a cut questline about Thalmor or the Civil War. There's a line in her dialogue about fearing she'll be hunted, but the threat never comes. No one is looking for her, and no one even knows she's there. Bethesda laid down the bricks, then they went to lunch and never came back. Naturally, the community did what it always does when Bethesda leaves a thread hanging. They started knitting sweaters out of it. Some people think Angie was part of a lost faction, maybe a surviving blade or an offshoot of the Dark Brotherhood. Her archery skills, her isolation, the whole mysterious woman in the woods vibe, it kinda just fits. Others say that she was part of a scrapped mentor system. You'd find NPCs who trained you over time, like Aethys with one-handed, but maybe the system was buggy or half-finished, and Angie is just the last remnant. And then there's my favourite theory. Angie is a ghost. Think about it. She never eats, she never sleeps, she never leaves her property. She speaks in soft, static lines that never change. If you kill her, and you can, there's no bounty. No one reacts. It's like the game doesn't acknowledge her existence at all. Like she's already dead, just lingering. In Skyrim, we're trained to evaluate NPCs like vending machines. Can I marry them? Can they follow me? Do they give me loot, XP, a quest? Angie doesn't do any of that. She gives you a few arrows and some advice, and then she's done. Which is probably why most players forget about her. She's not marked, she's not repeated, she's not important. But maybe there's a point. Maybe she exists precisely because she doesn't do anything. Because in a world that's constantly handing you objectives, Angie is just present. No monster to slay, no dialogue wheel to grind through, no skill tree to max out. She's a human moment in the game of godhood. And that might just be the rarest thing in all of Skyrim. Angie is lonely, but not in the dramatic violin swell kind of way. Skyrim doesn't really do that. Her loneliness is quieter than that. It's in the silence after she stops talking. It's in the second bed that no one sleeps in. It's in the way she just stands there, all day, not doing much of anything. Not waiting, not watching, just existing in a space that no one else ever bothers to visit. And it's not the sad kind of lonely either. Well, not exactly. It's just the absence of things. Of movement, of conversation, of purpose. Skyrim is full of NPCs with routines and routes and radiant quests that make them feel alive. Angie has none of that. She's not part of the story, she's the pause between stories, the breath you take before fast travelling somewhere louder. And once you notice it, once you feel that quiet hanging around her, it sticks with you. We all know loneliness is baked into Skyrim. You're the Dragonborn, the Chosen One. You're everywhere and nowhere at once, saving towns, toppling kings, talking to gods. And yet somehow you're always a little bit apart. You're not from here, you're through here. And every now and then you meet someone who feels the same. Angie is one of them.
She doesn't want to help. She doesn't want glory. She's not waiting for a hero to solve her problems. She just wants to be left alone. You can join her for a while, sleep in the spare bed, sit by the fire, practice your aim. But eventually, you'll leave. And she'll still be there, in the same spot watching the snowfall. Or maybe not watching at all. Maybe she's just existing. Skyrim is a loud game. Dragons, dungeons, shouting people off cliffs. But every once in a while, it whispers. And sometimes it whispers in the form of a woman in the woods who wants nothing from you, gives you nothing grand and leaves you with nothing but a question. Maybe Angie doesn't do anything. Maybe she just is. And maybe in a world built on utility, that's the most remarkable thing of all. One of Skyrim's biggest strengths is the freedom it gives the player. Most quests simply assume you'll say yes, pushing you toward the next dungeon, the next reward, or the next adventure. But every so often, the game does something surprisingly different. It lets you reject the premise entirely. Instead of following the path laid out in front of you, you can refuse to take part, walk away from the people asking for your help, or even dismantle an entire storyline before it truly begins. In many cases, the quest itself still exists, but your decision completely changes how you experience it, and the consequences that follow. These moments are incredibly rare, which makes them all the more interesting. They're the quests where Skyrim briefly stops telling you what to do, and instead asks what kind of character you actually want to be. These are the only quests in Skyrim you can actually reject. One of the more surprising quests you can reject in the Elder Scrolls Skyrim is Kyne's Sacred Trials, a unique side quest given by the elderly hunter Froki Wettedblade. Unlike most NPCs who endlessly repeat their requests until you eventually give in, Froki is different, hidden away in his isolated mountain shack overlooking the forests of the Rift. He spends his days living according to the old Nordic traditions, worshipping Kyne instead of the 8 divines and teaching his grandson how to survive off the land. When you first speak with him, he eventually tells you about Kyne's Sacred Trials, an ancient hunt designed to test the warrior's skill, patience, and respect for nature. He offers you the chance to undertake these trials, asking you to hunt a series of powerful guardian beasts that represent Kyne's creatures. On the surface, it sounds like another straightforward hunting quest, but what makes it so unusual is the conversation that comes before it. Rather than forcing the quest into your journal regardless of your response, Skyrim actually allows you to refuse. If you tell Froki that you're not interested, he accepts your decision. More importantly, he never brings up the subject again. Unlike countless other NPCs across Skyrim who seem trapped in an endless loop of repeating the same requests every time you speak to them, Froki treats your answer as final. That small detail is surprisingly rare. Throughout Skyrim, most quests are incredibly persistent. Walk past an innkeeper enough times and they'll continue mentioning local rumours. Speak to a Jarl about a problem, and the opportunity usually remains available indefinitely. Many NPCs seem almost frozen in time, patiently waiting for the Dragonborn to eventually decide they're ready. Years can pass in game, civil wars can end, dragons can be defeated, yet those conversations often remain exactly where players left them. Froki doesn't behave that way. He asks once, you answer, life moves on. That alone makes Kyne's Sacred Trials stand out. The quest itself reflects Froki's personality remarkably well. He isn't interested in recruiting adventures for fame or wealth. His purpose is deeply personal. Froki believes Skyrim has abandoned its ancient traditions. To him, Kyne is the true mother of the Nords, the goddess who taught humanity to survive in the wilderness long before modern religion arrived. He openly criticizes the growing influence of the divines, believing the old ways have been forgotten. The Sacred Trials, therefore, aren't simply a hunt. They're an invitation into Froki's worldview. Accepting the quest means agreeing to experience those traditions firsthand. Rejecting it means politely declining everything he represents. That distinction makes the refusal surprisingly meaningful. You're not merely saying no to another objective marker. You're refusing participation in an ancient cultural ritual.
Froki understands that, which is perhaps why he never asks again. His respect for personal choice is one of the most overlooked aspects of his character. He clearly values Kyne's traditions enormously, yet he never attempts to force those beliefs onto the player. If the Dragonborn declines, he simply accepts the trials aren't for them. There is something quietly admirable about that response. He believes deeply, but he recognizes belief cannot be compelled. From a gameplay perspective, refusing the quest has almost no mechanical consequences beyond missing its rewards. You won't hunt the Guardian Wolf, the Guardian Mudcrab, the Saber Cat, the Skeever, or the Guardian Bear. You also forgo Froki's reward at the end. Yet narratively, something much more interesting happens. The story ends before it begins. Most Skyrim quests assume the Dragonborn eventually accepts responsibility. Kyne's Sacred Trials genuinely allows players to decide that this particular adventure simply isn't part of their character's journey. Perhaps your Dragonborn has no interest in hunting sacred animals. Perhaps they reject Froki's religious beliefs. Perhaps they're simply too busy. Whatever the reason, the game respects that decision. Another reason this refusal feels unique is because of Froki's isolated lifestyle. He lives high in the mountains, far removed from cities and politics. He has no influence over Skyrim's major events, no powerful faction supporting him. His request feels entirely voluntary. Unlike Jarls requesting military assistance or guild leaders offering advancement, Froki asks for nothing benefiting himself. The trials exist for your sake, not his. If you refuse, his life continues exactly as before. He keeps hunting, keeps teaching his grandson, keeps honouring Kyne. The world doesn't punish either of you. While many quests technically remain optional, very few present a direct conversational refusal that permanently closes the opportunity. Usually declining simply delays acceptance until later. Froki's response creates genuine finality. Once the conversation ends, so does the invitation. The sacred trials become something you consciously choose not to experience. Ultimately, Kyne's Sacred Trials earns its place among the only quests in Skyrim you can truly reject because it treats the player's decision as meaningful rather than temporary. Froki Wedded Blade doesn't pressure you, repeat himself endlessly, or wait forever for you to change your mind. He offers an invitation into the ancient traditions he has spent his life preserving, and if you politely decline, he accepts your answer without complaint. The quest never begins, the objectives never appear, and the sacred trials simply remain another forgotten piece of Skyrim's history. It's a small interaction, but one that says a great deal about both Froki and Bethesda's quest design. In a game where most adventures patiently wait for the Dragonborn to say yes, this is one of the rare moments where saying no actually matters. And perhaps that's exactly why it feels so memorable. Rather than forcing you down another path, Skyrim quietly acknowledges that sometimes the most meaningful choice a player can make is to walk away. When most players think about rejecting a quest in Skyrim, they imagine simply saying no and walking away. But one quest takes that idea much further. Rather than politely declining an invitation, destroying the Dark Brotherhood allows you to reject an entire faction by dismantling it completely. It is one of the most unusual branching moments in Skyrim, because unlike other major guilds, the Dark Brotherhood doesn't simply accept your refusal and move on. Instead, Bethesda gives players the opportunity to completely reverse the premise of one of the game's largest quest lines. Rather than becoming an assassin rising through the ranks and serving the Night Mother, you can decide that the Brotherhood should never exist at all. It's less about refusing to participate and more about actively destroying the organization before its story has the chance to unfold. The choice begins inside the abandoned shack. After completing the event involving Aventus Aretino and Grillod the Kind, the Dragonborn is kidnapped by Astrid and awakes in a small isolated cabin. Astrid immediately presents what appears to be a simple test. 3 captives kneel before you. She insists that one of them carries a contract and one deserves to die. She expects you to prove yourself by choosing a victim. Most players naturally assume the only real choice involves deciding which prisoner to kill. After all, every other part of the conversation encourages exactly that conclusion. Astrid never suggests another option. The game doesn't highlight one either. But Skyrim quietly hides a fourth choice. You can attack Astrid herself. The moment she dies, everything changes. Rather than beginning one of Skyrim's most famous faction questlines, you've effectively ended it before it truly begins. Her body carries a letter directing you to Commander Morrow. Taking that letter to Dragon Bridge unlocks an entirely different quest. Instead of joining the assassins, you become the person responsible for wiping them out. That decision is surprisingly significant because of how Skyrim usually handles factions. The companions remain available forever. The College of Winterhold patiently waits. The Thieves' Guild continues operating whether you join or not. You can ignore them indefinitely. But the Dark Brotherhood is different. Here you're not simply refusing membership, you're preventing the faction from continuing at all. Commander Morrow immediately recognizes the importance of what you've done. The Pentius Oculatus has spent years hunting the Brotherhood with little success. Astrid's death gives them exactly the opportunity they've been waiting for. Morrow wastes no time. He orders an assault on the Falkreath Sanctuary. The player joins Imperial agents rather than assassins. The entire perspective shifts. Suddenly, you're the hunter instead of the recruit. Walking into the sanctuary feels remarkably different during the quest. Normally, players enter as honoured guests. Future family members greet them. The space gradually becomes home. Here, it's an enemy stronghold. Every assassin attacks on sight. People you would otherwise fight alongside become ordinary enemies standing between you and your objective. It creates one of the strangest alternate realities in Skyrim. Entire quest lines disappear because of a single decision inside a lonely shack. The assault itself carries surprising emotional weight. The sanctuary feels personal despite players barely knowing its occupants. Nazir, Babette, Festus Krex. Normally these characters receive extensive development throughout dozens of quests. Here most die before players ever truly meet them. Their stories end almost immediately. The Dragonborn never learns their histories, never shares meals with them, never hears their conversations. An entire faction vanishes before relationships can even begin. Mechanically, Destroy the Dark Brotherhood is much shorter than the standard Brotherhood storyline. Instead of hours of contracts, betrayals, political assassinations, and conspiracies surrounding the Emperor, players receive a relatively brief military operation, followed by a reward from Commander Morrow. Throughout Skyrim, many major events feel inevitable. Alduin must be confronted. The Civil War eventually reaches its conclusion. Certain story cannot be avoided. Destroy the Dark Brotherhood demonstrates that Bethesda was willing, at least occasionally, to let players fundamentally rewrite an entire narrative branch. One unexpected attack inside a small cabin permanently alters dozens of future events. Few quests in Skyrim offer consequences quite so dramatic. Ultimately, Destroy the Dark Brotherhood stands as the ultimate example of rejecting a questline because it goes far beyond simply saying no. Instead of ignoring an invitation or walking away from an opportunity, the Dragonborn actively tears apart one of Skyrim's oldest and most infamous organizations before its story can properly begin. The Sanctuary falls silent, its assassins are killed, its future is erased, and an entire faction ceases to exist because of a single decision made in the abandoned shack. While you can technically reject every major faction in Skyrim by never joining them, those groups continue living without you. The Dark Brotherhood is unique because rejecting it means destroying it entirely. Rather than leaving the door open for another day, you slam it shut forever. And in a game built around endless possibilities, that permanent choice makes Destroy the Dark Brotherhood one of the most fascinating quests Bethesda ever created. One of Skyrim's biggest irreversible decisions arrives during the Dawnguard expansion, where Bethesda asks players to do more than simply accept or reject a quest. You're asked to choose between two completely opposing factions, permanently closing the door on the other. Unlike most quests where declining an offer merely delays the storyline until you're ready, Bloodline presents a genuine fork in the road. Once you make your choice, there is no changing your mind. Whether you stand alongside the vampire hunters of the Dawnguard or embrace Lord Harkon's ancient vampire clan, one entire questline immediately disappears from that playthrough. It is one of the clearest examples in Skyrim of the game respecting a player's decision by refusing to offer a second chance. The moment arrives after one of Dawnguard's most memorable journeys. You've escorted Serana across Skyrim, discovering the hidden entrance to Castle Volkihar, watching the enormous gates slowly open, and finally met Lord Harkon himself. Everything leading up to this encounter suggests the story is only just the beginning. Then Harkon presents a single offer: become a vampire lord, join his family, accept the gift of immortality, or refuse. On paper, the decision seems straightforward. In reality, it completely reshapes the remainder of the expansion. If you accept Harkon's gift, you immediately become part of Clan Volkihar. The Dawnguard effectively becomes your enemy. Their fort, once a place of refuge, transforms into hostile territory. Instead of hunting vampires, you begin working alongside them, uncovering ancient vampire secrets and pursuing Auriel's bow from an entirely different perspective. You gain access to exclusive quests, unique vampire-themed equipment, powerful magical abilities, and the iconic Vampire Lord transformation itself. Entire characters begin treating you differently. Your story changes. If, however, you reject Harkon's offer, the outcome is equally dramatic. Rather than respecting your decision, Harkon immediately casts you out of Castle Volkihar. His words make the situation perfectly clear. You are no longer welcome. There will be no negotiations, no compromise, no opportunity to serve both sides. From that point, the Volkihar questline is permanently closed. Instead, you return to Fort Dawnguard, where Isren and his hunters become your allies for the remainder of the DLC. What makes this choice so fascinating is that neither option feels like the correct one. Unlike many role-playing games where obvious morality points players towards one path, Bethesda deliberately gives each faction compelling strengths. The Dawnguard represents order, protection, the defense of innocent people against an ancient vampire threat. They're practical, disciplined, and equipped with impressive anti-vampire technology: crossbows, armored trolls, rune weapons, fortified castles. Everything about them reflects preparation rather than supernatural power. Clan Volkihar, meanwhile, offers something entirely different: ancient knowledge, immortality, forbidden magic, political influence. The Vampire Lord form completely changes how players approach combat, introducing devastating abilities unavailable anywhere else in Skyrim. Rather than simply offering good versus evil, Dawnguard presents two fundamentally different philosophies. One side trusts humanity, the other embraces monstrous power. The permanence of the decision gives it genuine emotional weight. Throughout Skyrim, many choices feel temporary. Ignore a guild today, join tomorrow, walk away from a side quest, return weeks later. The world patiently waits. Bloodline refuses to do that. When Harkon asks his question, he expects an answer. Once given, everyone involved moves forward. The world changes accordingly. That finality makes the conversation unusually tense. Players understand they are not merely selecting the next quest objective, they are defining the rest of the expansion. The exclusive content reinforces that permanence. Players siding with the Dawnguard gain access to faction-specific missions, equipment, and upgrades unavailable elsewhere. Fort Dawnguard gradually expands as new members arrive. Specialized merchants appear, unique crossbows and enhanced bolts become available. The fort itself feels increasingly alive. Meanwhile, Vampire Lord players experience an entirely different progression. Castle Volkihar becomes home. The Bloodstone Chalice quest opens, ancient vampire relics become obtainable. Power rings, amulets, and vampire-specific rewards begin appearing. Each side receives enough exclusive content that choosing one genuinely means sacrificing the other. From a role-playing perspective, the decision is even more compelling. Imagine a noble dragonborn who has spent the entire game protecting villagers from monsters. Accepting Harkon's gift would feel completely out of character. Likewise, a ruthless mage fascinated by immortality might see the Dawn Guard as narrow-minded zealots rejecting incredible power out of fear. Neither interpretation feels forced. The choice naturally reflects the character players have been building throughout their adventure. Serana herself makes the decision more nuanced. Unlike Harkon, she exists somewhere between both worlds. Although she remains a vampire regardless of your choice, her personality prevents either faction from becoming completely one-dimensional. She questions her father's ambitions. She shows compassion, gradually develops trust in the Dragonborn. Her presence softens what could otherwise become a straightforward conflict between heroes and villains. Interestingly, rejecting Harkon simply isn't rejecting vampirism. It's rejecting his vision of the future. Harkon seeks to fulfill the tyranny of the sun prophecy, permanently blotting out the sun and allowing vampires to dominate Tamriel without fear. Refusing his gift therefore carries philosophical significance. You're refusing to become part of something much larger than personal power. Conversely, accepting his offer demonstrates a willingness to explore that darker path, even if the player ultimately opposes his final plan later. Compared to the destruction of the Dark Brotherhood, the Dawn Guard choice works differently. Destroying the Brotherhood removes an entire faction from the world. Bloodline preserves both factions but permanently determines which one your Dragonborn belongs to. The opposing side continues existing. It simply becomes inaccessible. That distinction makes the choice feel less like erasing content and more like living with the consequences of allegiance. Perhaps that's what makes Bloodline one of Skyrim's strongest branching quests. It understands that meaningful choices require meaningful sacrifices. If every reward remained available regardless of your decision, the choice itself would lose much of its significance. By permanently locking exclusive quests, characters, locations, and equipment behind each path, Bethesda ensures players genuinely consider what matters most to them: power, morality, identity, or curiosity. Ultimately, Bloodline stands as one of Skyrim's best examples of rejecting a questline, because choosing one future means permanently abandoning another. Refusing Lord Harkon's offer doesn't simply delay becoming a vampire lord, it closes the entire storyline, locking away Castle Volkahar's exclusive quests, the Bloodstone Chalice, unique vampire artifacts, and an entirely different perspective on the Dawn Guard expansion. Likewise, accepting Harkon's gift means leaving the Dawn Guard behind forever, turning former allies into enemies and embracing a completely different path. Unlike most quests that patiently wait for the Dragonborn to change their mind, Bloodline demands commitment. It asks players to define who their character really is, and then respects that decision by refusing to offer both rewards. In a game where so many opportunities remain open indefinitely, that willingness to permanently close one door in favour of another makes this one of Skyrim's most meaningful and most memorable choices. For a game celebrated for giving players endless freedom, it's surprising how rarely Skyrim actually asks you to say no. Most quests wait patiently for you, no matter how many dragons you've slain or how much time has passed. But the handful of quests that let you reject them or permanently alter their outcome stand out because your decision genuinely matters. Whether you're turning down an ancient hunter's sacred traditions, dismantling an infamous faction before it can recruit you, or choosing one side of a conflict while permanently closing the door on the other, these moments remind us that choice isn't just about what you do. Sometimes it's about what you refuse to do. They're rare, they're easy to miss, and they often lock away entire questlines, making them some of the most meaningful decisions in the game. Because in Skyrim, saying yes is expected, but every now and then saying no changes everything.